Welcome back, everybody. Here we are with another video, and it's a video game review. Haven't done one of these in a long time, but I just beat Final Fantasy 15 this morning, and I have to talk about it. Like with any good source of media, a book, a movie, TV show, when you're invested in it and you finish it and you're longing for more, sometimes the next best thing you could do is just talk about that thing. So here I am to talk about my experiences, and I figured since there's so much to say, I may as well turn it into a review, and you can find out whether or not this game is right for you and if you should play it. I'm going to say right now, yes, you probably should. Especially with 16 around the corner, I think that this game defies and surpasses a lot of expectations and a lot of the negativity that we've heard online, and it's actually worth giving a shot. So let me get into the expectations first and foremost. I've got my notes here and a little breakdown of how I want to do this. I had incredibly low expectations going into this game, because despite the critic reviews and some website reviews being generally positive, I'd only heard from people close to me that this game was lame, to put it blunt. And obviously it changed or did something different compared to a lot of the traditional Final Fantasy conventions. I'm going to talk about those later on as well. But really, the game, when I played it, it was enjoyable for the most part from start to finish. A mixed bag, but great overall. And how good is it compared to other Final Fantasy games? I will tell you that specifically in a future video. Beating this now was part of my work towards doing a Final Fantasy ranking where I'm going to do all the mainline games. So now, yes, finally, after years of owning the game, I've beaten 15, and I can talk about the whole series at a future time. Now, let me describe what goes on in 15 in case any of you are unaware with the general story or the synopsis. I won't get into too many details. It encompasses a love story. It's a hero story. It's about friendship and family and country. And I actually really like those aspects of the game, especially today in North America, where patriotism, for whatever reason, is a polarizing issue, and sometimes being seen as a patriot is a bad thing. I thought, you know what? Final Fantasy 15 doubles down on the Americana aspect, and it embraces patriotism, and it's about a boy who wants to save his country and the world. He's doing it for his father, he's doing it for his friends, and just because that's the responsibility that he's been born into as a noble. There's a very positive message in this game, which I can sum up as tomorrow is a new day. So even if you're having the worst day, even if you're in the worst of times, look towards tomorrow, work towards tomorrow, and make tomorrow a better day. If any of you have seen pictures or videos of the game before, then you might think, hey, what is this? This is just some 2000s emo boy band parading around the country, meeting different people and gallivanting throughout the countryside, occasionally slaying monsters and occasionally doing Final Fantasy things. Yeah, occasionally doing traditional Final Fantasy things. But that's just a part of the journey towards, saving the kingdom and saving the world, as it so happens. I'm not going to break down a lot of the detailed story points and the minute ones. You guys can play the game and experience it for yourselves. It is a bit of a traditional story, but its execution in certain areas, is stronger in some areas than it is in others. For example, with the love story, I didn't think that was executed so well, but you still have a particular fondness for some of the characters. The camaraderie is certainly what the game focuses on, and you do get the sense that this main character is befitting of the title that he is given, and you root for him and you root for his friends as they try to save the world. I alluded to this next section before. Does 15 fit in with the Final Fantasy franchise? I'm going to say certainly not at first. That was one of the main things that I kept on telling my friends is, hey, I like the game, I like what I'm playing, but it's not Final Fantasy. And you either forget about that or you just learn to accept the game for what it is as you play. There's certainly a lot of Final Fantasy fanfare and a lot of the stuff that we've come to expect, and I'll detail a lot of those later. Some of the main similarities for now are callback locations. When you go to certain woods, it's going to be a name that's taken from a previous Final Fantasy title. The enemy types, of course, we've seen those all throughout, like the Flans or the Marlboro. I may have just said the cigarette brand. I always get that mixed up. You have character names like Highwind, for example. You've always got a Cid in Final Fantasy. And they did admittedly do a good job of tying Final Fantasy into a realistic world. It's just did we want a realistic world, or does a realistic world feel like the right setting for Final Fantasy? That might be something that you grapple with as you play the game. So even though you're seeing things like what the chocobos eat, you know, those greens, those are available to feed the chocobos in the game, and those are also available as snacks that are made into something for humans. Think of in real life, you have dog treats, right? You could have peanut butter flavored dog treats, or you could have peanut butter flavored whatever for humans. So there's some interesting stuff that builds on the world and the fantasy of Final Fantasy. I think you're going to appreciate a lot of that as you explore the towns. They're littered with things like posters. There's tons of shopkeepers and vendors, and you can talk to them, and their menus are going to contain all of these things that you've known from Final Fantasy, and they're just, again, incorporated into realistic items or settings, things that we've never seen up until 15. So I appreciate a lot of the work that went into that. So I've got a few strong points from this game. The music in particular is a really good one, and there are going to be times when you're in the field and you come across a really strong monster. Might be a sub-boss or something like that. And the music kicks in as you begin the battle.
Thanks for the ride. Aw, thanks, buddy. Want some?
This music is finally exciting orchestral music. I have gotten so tired of different orchestral tracks from Dark Souls 3 and other games like that where, yeah, you know, they could be epic, but a lot of it just sounds the same. I think at this point we've just been inundated with orchestral music, but Final Fantasy 15 does a great job of incorporating the female chorus and the female lead singer, the orchestral instruments, and some tracks just deliver that epic battle experience. Another great thing are the graphics. Some things with the graphics are hit or miss. For some reason, the in-game cutscenes, sometimes they're rendered in a way that looks like they're just a lower resolution, at least than what I'm playing at. Maybe if I had my screen for a 1080, I would see it better, but my screen is 1440. I'm not sure if that makes a difference when the cutscenes play. Overall, though, the graphics are great, especially since this is a 2016 release, but the game had been worked on long before that. And in particular, the locations, some environments, and the details like a monster's flesh or scales, your clothing and the patterns on it, the intricacies of those patterns, your car, and other things like that that detail and decorate the world, they look amazing. So you're going to have some moments in the game where you go to different locations and you're just going to want to take it in for a moment, appreciate the scale and the scope of everything, and if you look closely, appreciate a lot of those smaller details too. The last strong point here worth mentioning is the camaraderie between the characters. So these characters were not necessarily great individually. You've got Noctis, your main character, and then his boy band consists of Prompto, Ignis, and Gladio, or Gladius, or whatever his name is. They call him Gladio in the game. And, you know, like I said, individually, they may not be the most appealing characters, but they work really well together. And it's the little things like the constant dialogue and the banter between them, even though at times it feels a little too cheesy, and I'll get into that when I talk about some negatives. Despite all of the negatives, it still feels really fun, and it does bring you into them and their friendship and their group. And as long as you're controlling Noctis, you kind of feel like you're going along with them, and that's your group of boys right there. You're the band of boys out to save the world. All right, now for my complaints about the game, I may as well pick up on the cheesiness because I was just talking about it. This is minor for me, but it may bother some people more than it affected me. I noticed really early on that it was just kind of like that, I don't know what to call it necessarily. It seems like it's just very Japanese, if you know what I mean. The sense of humor there and the dialogue style. Maybe it's something that only happened in localization and in translation, but let me paint a picture for you here. There's a scene really early on where it's something a little more serious, right? Like the characters are just about to go start their mission. They're being sent out by Noctis's father. And Noctis's father says something, and the characters take their turns really quickly, all having a quip that they have to jump in with. Prompto especially, he's notorious for this during the whole game. Something will happen or some chain of dialogue will occur, and Prompto immediately cuts in with his little quip because that's his personality. It's overdone at times, it's out of place most of the time, but again, you get used to it and you appreciate the other aspects of the story. Like I said, this game is a mixed bag, but overall it's pretty darn good. Another complaint of mine has to do with the combat. I thought it was fairly easy for most of the game and relatively simple compared to other action games. Actually, no, all action games are pretty simple. That's why I don't understand this new fad of making everything an action game. And, why do we have to rely on quick time events and quick time breaks? That stuff aside, it was fairly easy for most of the game, which meant I did not have to really delve into the systems and the mechanics, and I didn't have to master them. I could tinker with them and I could experiment with these stats or this power up or that buff or this magic. But then when I encountered the difficulty spikes at the end of the game, and it turns out I was underleveled, whatever. When I encountered those difficulty spikes, all of a sudden I wished that, I don't know, the game had done a better job of teaching me certain things about the combat, or that it had thrown other challenges at me before and I would have learned to adapt in the combat. Some of the boss battles just feel like you're unprepared for them, and again, this could be because I was underleveled at the end of the game. I burned through so many restoratives, but hey, I still beat the game somehow. And the reason why I was underleveled at the end is related to my next point, pacing. My final complaint, the pacing of the game was off. And I was enjoying so much of the game for the first half, like what I mentioned earlier. And then when I got to the latter half, first of all, it throws a terrible dungeon on you that overstays its welcome. And then it does some stuff related to the story that I don't want to spoil, and you just feel like, well, what's the point of going back and doing side quests now? What is the point of going back and leveling up or grinding or doing any of that stuff now? Just let me beat the game. Like, you already know what's going to happen. You already know what the consequences are going to be, so just let me beat the game. That's how I felt, and that's why I kind of rushed through the ending. And just to give a little detail to that point, which I can only allude to, I want to make this a spoiler-free video. The story curveball makes being a completionist feel pointless. There's going to come a time in the game where, let me set it like this for you. When you play certain games and you get to new regions, sometimes in an open world game, the whole world is still available to you. In Final Fantasy 15, the previous region becomes unavailable to you. Now that's okay because you're thinking, well, I'll be able to go back, so no problem. And you do get to go back. But the circumstances in which you're allowed to return to past regions, previous regions, again, they made it for me such that I didn't want to. It felt pointless. If any of you want to know, maybe you can talk to me in the comments section and I'll tell you what my thoughts are on that. But again, spoiler-free video. Now, to wrap this one up, I'm just going to go through a few personal favorites of mine during this game. I thought the camping was pretty funny. At first, I thought it was ultimately a little bit pointless, and I didn't like that camping leveled you up and tallied your EXP. So just really quickly in this game, you're going to be accumulating EXP, and then when you finally rest at an inn or a hotel or by camping, your EXP is finally counted towards your leveling up progress. Until then, it's just kind of sitting there as a bank of points. And if you use a hotel, you get a multiplier on that. If you use an RV, you get a smaller multiplier. If you camp, you get no multiplier. But at the same time, the game is expecting you to do frequent camping because when you camp, you get to cook food, and when you cook food, you get battle bonuses, combat bonuses. So you're kind of balancing that, where you want to camp, you want to get your bonus, but then you're spending your EXP with no multiplier. Still, I liked it because it added some development between the characters. It was an opportunity to flesh out a lot of the lore and just show you a lot of cool, interesting things in the world. Like, hey, here's what the characters are eating. Or, hey, you know that monster over there? You actually hunt it and turn it into this dish. I love that kind of stuff. I did enjoy the fact that we had side quests. Now, a lot of the side quests were too simple. For example, I think 90% of them, they feel like you just go and get the side quest, you travel somewhere by car, and you go and kill that monster, and then you turn the side quest in, and that's it. I'm going to give you one example of a side quest, and I'm sure there's 20 more exactly like this. A vendor calls out to Noctis, and he goes, "Hey Noctis, I've been wanting to put this on my menu, but I can't actually get that monster by myself. Can you go do it for me?" And for whatever reason, Noctis is like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that." So you go on these hunts and whatever. Now, Noctis is a great character for the protagonist. He's duty-bound, he's honorable, he's likable, and even though he's got his moments, I think he might be everyone's favorite from the group of four, but hey, could be wrong. He was my favorite at least because I like that malleable hero mold where you can just kind of self-insert if you're someone who likes doing the right thing. So Noctis, good characters. Everyone else, for the most part, good cast of characters. The chocobos and the creatures, like I said, I really like those guys as well. Riding the chocobos and riding the car also. The car in particular was a really weird one. Again, so many things have their pros and have their cons. It's like nothing in this game is outright bad or outright good. You're going to be riding by chocobo, and that's nice because it can let you go into the water. You're going to be driving your car around a lot, and that's nice because the world is massive and you need the car to get around. And it's funny, it's silly, right? Like, that is one of the main appeals of this game. That so much emphasis is put on the car, I find really amusing because that's a distinct part of American culture, I feel, especially American culture in the rural areas and in the Midwest, car culture. So it really embodies that, does a good job of it. There's going to be times where you can fast travel. There's going to be times where, whether you want to or not, you have to take your time with the trip and just enjoy it. Listen to the characters banter, take a look at the different sceneries that are around you. And I think that's about it. Of course, there's so much more I could probably say about this game, but I just finished it today. I wrote down a page of notes as quickly as I could, and that's my review for Final Fantasy 15. So 2 things. 1, look forward to my upcoming video. I'm not sure when it's going to come out, but sometime before 16, where I'm ranking the mainline games, and you're going to see where I put Final Fantasy 15 in there. I'll give you a little spoiler. It's relatively high. Surprisingly, this game is actually one of my favorite Final Fantasies now. It's in the top half for sure. And second of all, with that said, I do recommend playing the game. If you have the time, especially, you don't even have to play it before 16 necessarily. I think it's such a unique experience where it draws from different open world games. It draws, obviously, from a lot of the Final Fantasy games. It's just its own thing, and it's fun, it's silly, and it's relatively short, with the main story being about 20 to 25 hours. I beat the game in about 28 hours, and that was a combination of a lot of exploration in the early parts of the game, and then rushing the second half of the game. So that's it. That is my review for Final Fantasy 15. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.